Hello friends, today we'll be reviewing Cold Comforts by Marianne Halbert. Cold Comforts was written by Marianne Halbert, was published in July of 2019, and is a collection of short horror stories. Before we get started on the review, I would like to say thank you again to author H.B. Diaz. During our conversation video, she recommended Cold Comforts to me because she thought I would enjoy it, and I really, spoiler alert, I really enjoyed it, so I want to say thank you again. She was spot on with this recommendation, so thank you H.B. Diaz for making that recommendation. I would also like to say thank you again to author Marianne Halbert and booktuber Lady Jane Books. I read this book with Lady Jane Books. We did a buddy read with it, and then we jumped on stream with Marianne Halbert, and we broke down each story one by one. And that was just an absolute blast. I loved hearing the inspirations and the stories behind it. So it was just a joy to do that. I want to thank them again both for taking the time to sit down and chat. So during that stream, we did have a non-spoiler section at the beginning, but we do get into spoilers for each individual story. So read the book first and then go and watch the video. It is very, very interesting having read the book and then listening to Marianne Halbert talk about each story individually. So when I started reading Cold Comforts, I wasn't too sure what to expect because I go into books blind. I didn't know much about the writing style or the type of stories they were. I just knew they were horror stories. And after the very first story, I was hooked. That first story is fantastic, and it really hooked me. And after the first story, I thought, how do I describe this style of writing and this style of storytelling? So I went to the back of the book, and there's a mention there. It is literary horror or quiet horror. And then it made sense to me, and I understood what those terms meant after I read the first story and the stories to follow. Now, the stories in this book aren't over the top. They aren't really in your face. They sneak up on you, and they surprise you. So a lot of these stories, you kind of get a little comfortable, and then something kind of creeps in, and you just feel it. It's like you feel something crawling on you, and you're wondering what it is. And by the end of the story, it starts making sense. It kind of slowly creeps on you and grows on you, and then by the end of the story, you just have this odd feeling. And because these stories kind of creep up on you, some of the endings are a little ambiguous, and you have to fill in the gaps of what's happening, and you have to, sometimes that's even creepier than knowing what actually happened. So they really leave you thinking, and they stick with you, and they stick with you while you're reading it. You feel it crawling on you, and when you're done reading the story, it's still crawling on you because you're still thinking about it, and you're still wondering, what was that? Where did that originate from? Where is this from? And that in some ways is scarier than just being in your face and knowing what's happening. Sometimes little hints, little clues here and there clue you into what's really happening, and that's very, very well done in this one. Now, we've talked about this before, but short stories are very difficult to write. To engage the reader in a short amount of time, to tell your story, to fill it with enough but not too much information is very hard to pull off. And in this book, the stories vary in length. Some of them are a little longer than others, some of them are a little shorter. But after each story, you feel like you read a novel. And not because it took you a long time to read it or because it was a chore, but because there's so much information in each story that you see the world that's being played at, and you see the world that's being developed, you see the characters, and it all kind of makes sense. But it's packed into a short story, but it doesn't feel packed. Now, there were a couple of stories that were effective, but by the end I was a little lost with what was really happening. So while it was scary and creepy, by the end I wasn't quite sure what was being played out, or I wasn't quite sure what was going on, but they were still fun reads, so I didn't mind it too much. Now, usually I would say this book was really hard to put down, and I enjoyed it so much because it was hard to put down, but in this case, after each story, I almost wanted to put it down because I wanted some time to kind of decompress and think about the story I just read, because I had so many thoughts about it. I had so many things going on in my brain that I just had to take a minute and absorb what I just what I just read in a good way, not in a bad way. This is a great collection of short horror stories. If you're a fan of quiet horror or literary horror or just horror in general, give it a read. It is well worth your time. If you do read it and you want to chat about it, let me know, because these are the kind of stories you want to talk about because you have so many theories and thoughts after each story. So if you would like to chat about it, I'd love to chat about it with you. I'm going to rate Cold Comforts 4 hollygobs out of 5. You know, I read this book about a month ago, and I'm still thinking about some of these stories. I'm still going over theories and trying to pick up bits and pieces of what I may have missed or clues I may have missed in what story, and kind of seeing the stories in a different way. So it's very, very effective horror stories. If you do pick up this book, be sure and leave a review on Amazon or Goodreads or wherever you may have purchased it. Reviews go a very, very long way in helping these authors get their books out to more people. So reviews are very important. Be sure and leave a review after you read, whether it's this book or another book. They go a very, very long way. I hope you found this review helpful. As always, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you soon.